Jacksonville Jaguars select
Trophy Chase, Arizona.
with the second pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select
Cody Smith, Houston, Texas. The fantasy draft room is now on the clock.
Welcome to the fantasy draft room. I am Chase, and with me, as always, we got Cody Smith. We got a 10-round startup mock with rookies today.
Yes, sir. This is our first startup mock that we've been able to do since Sleeper implemented the rookies into it. So instead of having placeholder picks like we've had before, or just using vets, this one does include all of the rookies. Where do they fall? Where does Bijan go? That's probably a lot of people's questions as we open up this thing. Is he in the first round, or do we fade him all the way back to the second? We'll figure that one out as we go. But man, these startup mocks are a lot of fun. Always love doing these. And we gave ourselves a little bit of a challenge this time.
Yeah, man. The big thing is everyone has kind of identified there are the top tier quarterbacks, and then there's kind of everyone else. So if you're drafting from that, 9, 10, 11, 12 spot, how do you draft, chasing quarterback or going zero QB? Like, what different ways can you still build a winning roster or a good roster out of those last spots? So we are going to test that out today. We're going to test that out over the next few months as well to help us out, because in the end, people are going to be stuck in those 9, 10, 11, 12 spots, and they're not going to get a top tier quarterback, and you got to know what to do.
That's the issue, right? We have, in my mind, I don't know if it's the same as yours, but I have 9 quarterbacks that I'm fine with drafting in the first. But that leaves 3 spots at the 10, 11, and 12 that if I'm there, what do I do? Do I just, do I take Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb? Do I take a guy like Bijan and try to build my roster around that? It's a lot of work to try to figure out your team direction in the startups. This is where we wanted to give ourselves the challenge, figure out if there was a different way that looks good at the end of at least 10 rounds, because that's the main core of your team probably, especially if you're in a start 10, 8, 9, something like that. Obviously, super flex for everything we do. So quarterbacks are key. It's a tough build. It's a tough ask to try to make it work, because you were just in such a better position, especially if you're in the top 6 quarterbacks, the top 5 picks. They're just completely different assets than anything you get beyond that point.
Yeah, man. In this one, I know you went zero QB, and as I said, I chased quarterback, so I went out of the range. So let's kick things off here with the first 3 rounds and see what this looks like. As you mentioned, first 9 picks, chalk quarterback, right? Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, Herbert, Fields, Burrow went a little bit later, Lamar, T-Law. I'm fine with all of those. Mix and match, however you want to do it. Do your thing. You'll be happy with any of those 9. It is these last 4 picks that really gets challenging. So we had Justin Jefferson come off the board as the first positional player, Jamar Chase right after. Like I said, chased quarterback, so I did take Deshaun Watson. And you kind of surprised us here with Travis Kelce at the back of the first.
I wanted to do something bold, and I think we started this one off on, when did they play? Sunday or Saturday? Whichever day they played. Saturday. Saturday is when we kicked this one off, and I'm just watching Kelce dominate the field. And I'm like, I don't care if this guy is 32 years old right now. He's the best tight end in football. In the history of football, I am bold enough to say I don't even think that's bold at all. We've seen Rob Gronkowski, but he was always hurt. Kelce, in regular season games, outside of being benched by his team for safety reasons, has never missed a game. That is insane to think about. He has not missed a game other than being benched at the end of a regular season game. That is a Iron Man record, especially at the tight end position. I feel like you're fact checking me right now, so tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it is. Insane, and he's back to back to back to back to back. Tight end 1 every single year. I don't even care about the age anymore at this point. Just give me Travis Kelce on these teams. and things are flying off the screen.
So as I wasn't actually fact checking you here, I was actually looking at Travis Kelce, because one of the big things that we talked about is Travis Kelce's longevity, right? He's obviously 32. The big thing is he is 2,200 yards or 2,100 yards behind Tony Gonzalez for the all-time receiving yards leader at the position. Tony Gonzalez was the Kansas City Chief as well. So there's a lot of correlation there. So that would kind of measure out to 2 more seasons of 1,000-yard production, potentially a 3rd season on top of that if he really wants to kind of put a stamp on things. So he has at least 2 to 3 years to play. And we play in 2 to 3 year windows. So I do not mind this. He is no question the top tight end. And when you look at any scoring, any fantasy football league, he is up there with the top tier quarterback. So you are getting quarterback production out of your tight end spot, which is a clear advantage. So I'm good with that there. Let's roll into the second round here and kind of check out things. So you did take Kelsey and Lamb at the turn. I again chased quarterbacks. So I got 2 quarterbacks with Watson and Prescott. We see Bijan off the board. A.J. Brown, JT, Waddle, Kyler, Amon-Ra, Bryce Young is the first rookie quarterback, Tyreek, Garrett Wilson, and CMC. Just wanted to read that thing off. What stood out to you about this round in particular?
Well, I think with this one being our first startup mock, that we do have the rookies involved. Like I opened with, one of the biggest questions we had going in was, where would Bijan Robinson go?
Yep.
Our community is probably a little bit lower than consensus just because he's a running back and we don't like running backs. So still 2-3 is very high. He's the first running back off the board, higher than JT, CMC, Barkley, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker. I know a lot of people are going to think those last 2 are probably a little bit low, but Bijan going off here at the 2-3, man, there was a lot of me. There was a lot of me at this turn. I wanted to try out the 0 quarterback build, but there was a lot of me that wanted to stack that Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. Now, we did just see Dak implode in the playoffs. Now people are saying he might not even be their starter next year.
Stop it.
No, Dak's going to be the starter there. Come on.
Overreactive Cowboy fans, get out of here.
Yeah, he's going to be like, what else are you going to do? Are you going to go try to find a rookie? You ain't going to find anything as good as Dak, more than likely. So he's going to be there, and his favorite target's going to be CeeDee Lamb. So I wanted to test out the theory, but that probably is where I would have gone. Past that, man, I don't know about JT anymore. I've been thinking about this one a little bit lately, and like outside of 1 year, what has he shown us, and what has this Colts offense shown us to say that they're going to get any better, that JT is going to get any better? I don't see much of a difference between Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, and Jonathan Taylor anymore. I mean, his rookie year wasn't even that great. His sophomore year was great. Now he has a down 3rd year. I mean, what are we looking for out of Jonathan Taylor long term anymore?
Yeah, I know people are going to say he's young. He still can put up 1,500, 1,600 yards on the ground. He's not really much in the passing game. There is going to be a new head coach system there. We'll kind of see how that pans out for JT. His RB1 overall season was the lowest fantasy points total for an RB1 in, I think, since we've
10
tracked
years or something like that.
Like since we've tracked
Long
fantasy
while.
stats. Yeah. So it's one of the lowest all time. But he was an RB1. He's still a very good player. I just don't know that I'm taking him here early second, having Kyler still on the board, having some of these top tier wide receivers still on the board, not really where I'd be taking him. I'm okay with Bijan. I'm okay with CMC when you're looking at the running back landscape here in the second. The thing that kind of stood out to me here in the second was this is January, so there's no more fantasy for 2022, right? We're projecting 2023. So we're projecting Jalen Waddle, Amon-Ra, Garrett Wilson. Like, they just felt a little early. Like, I would take Tyreek over for sure his teammate. Like, I know Jalen Waddle's younger, but Tyreek Hill is the number 1 on that team. Tyreek Hill is one of the best wide receivers in the league. I think for me, it's like him and Diggs as like my 4-5 right after, actually 5-6. I'll put A.J. Brown up there too. And so Waddle is more like a T. Higgins, Devonta Smith type. So as we roll into the third round here, we're kind of looking at some of those wide receivers. Kind of surprised me to see some of these young guys hopping. I guess, yeah, they're 28, but I don't see any of them slowing down in the next 2 to 3 years.
It's the difference of how we dynasty, man. Like we're typically going to build these startups. We're going to build them for the win now. And whenever you do that, you can grab some of these 28, 29-year-old players and wide receivers at a discount. I mean, you're telling me I can get a Cooper Kupp like I got here at the back of the third,
Yeah.
a guy that's going to have, as we know it now, Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, and Cooper Kupp are all returning him back for another year, another run at it. And I if that all happens, I can't see Cooper Kupp being a outside of the wide receiver 10. So obviously you're paying for the age, you're paying for how many years, you're paying for the unknown. But I mean, what's the difference in the unknown between some of these, like Cooper Kupp versus Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle? I mean, we don't even know what their quarterback situation is going to look like. A lot of people are fading Tua because they don't know what the quarterback position looks like, but we're still buying into Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill in the top 6, top 7 wide receivers. There's a lot of variance in fantasy football, and I think with how we want to build, we're going to build around the guys that we've known and we've seen prove to us that they are going to be that asset for the long haul.
And as we dive into the third here, just because it is a smaller board, just going to read some of these off. T. Higgins, Stephon Diggs, Devonta Smith, Barkley, Tua, as you mentioned, going in the mid-third. We have Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, Austin Eckler as a little running back run, C.J. Stroud. And then we actually, this is tight end premium. Just to reiterate, this is playing with a tight end premium league. And we finally have Kyle Pitts at the 310. I took Mark Andrews at the 311. And then, as you mentioned, Cooper Kupp to round things out here in the third. The names themselves don't really surprise me. I was a little bit shocked to see the tight ends drop this far. The one thing I wanted to ask you about is Smitty had a freaking smash end of the year. How do you feel about Devonta Smith in general, in fantasy? Just kind of, he's a third rounder here, which he has never been.
No, we're talking about a guy that's probably, I don't have it up in front of me, but if we were to pull up the 2022 ADP, I mean, he's probably going round 9, round 10 as a wide receiver. I think what we've seen from Devonta Smith is, I mean, Barry's also stacking him here with Jalen Hurts. So we're seeing the evolution in the passing game of Jalen Hurts here. And I think that's really what it is. I mean, if you really look at it, the difference between A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, I don't think it's truly that much. Devonta Smith balled out, especially down the stretch of this season.
Yeah.
So to have this much of a gap, I mean, if you're seeing Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill closer than you're seeing A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, I don't actually know if that's fair anymore. I think I've had A.J. Brown as my number 3 because coming into this year, I thought he was going to be the alpha. I thought that he was going to dominate targets from Devonta Smith, and we've seen Devonta Smith is a damn good wide receiver too. You can say all the BMI, you can say the size, you can say the stereotypical alpha stuff that you want to, but Devonta Smith is a good wide receiver. So I actually think that this is a perfect spot for Devonta Smith. I could argue for him higher.
Yeah, I would take him over T. Higgins. I would take him over Garrett Wilson, in my opinion, right now. The question is him being a 2 on his own team, but
T. Higgins is a 2.
T. Higgins is a 2. Jalen Waddle is a 2 on his own team, and he's going higher. Again, I get throw out any of the BMI stuff, throw out prospect profile. The guy can play and he can separate at an elite level. He is going to be such a good wide receiver going forward. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think you could argue with him higher. I think in the end, I would just rather fade guys like T. Higgins and guys like Waddle, and I probably would take Devonta Smith over both of those guys at this point in time. And that might be a little hot takey at this point. But let's dive into the running backs here. Like you mentioned, Saquon, Breece, Kenneth Walker, Eckler. Feels pretty good.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with these guys. Obviously, we're lower on the running back room as a whole. Austin Eckler is the one that scares me. I know he's done it back-to-back years, but with a offensive coordinator change happening in Los Angeles right now for the Chargers, I don't know if he's going to be the primary back for both rushing and receiving, which could take away from his 20 touchdowns that he's put up in back-to-back years, I think. So if he's not getting that and he's not getting as many passes behind the line of scrimmage, because we've seen this offense just go so short field under Joe Lombardi, where Justin Herbert's ADOT is one of the lowest in the league. And that is not what Justin Herbert's skill set should be allowing him to do. This is hampering Justin Herbert and his evolution in terms of my opinion. So I am scared a little bit about the future production of Austin Eckler, and there's the age concern. He is the smaller back who's still going to have production in my mind. I just don't know if he's going to have the same role to keep him up here as the RB 5-6 range.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he should put up some good numbers for the next year or two. But there's definitely questions. He's up there in age. But yeah, if you have CMC up there that high as RB3, you could probably argue that Austin Eckler should be able to produce for the next couple of years. Just with the team build so far with T-Law, JT, and Eckler, it doesn't really fit what I would like to do as I start up. So I'm going to pull up the next set of slides here and kind of look at the next chunk of the board. And we start to see, as you mentioned here, your team, you took Kupp, DK at the turn. I ended up taking Mark Andrews and Drake London. Scared me a little bit, not going to lie. So just looking at our team specifically, you had DK. I'm not going to get your rookie picks. I took Drake London, Traylon, and Addison. It felt really weird doing it at the time, but I ended up being okay with it. That fourth round is really where things get hairy for me. I feel like that's where you kind of have to make some tough decisions.
I definitely think it is. And especially with the start that you went with here, you locked up 2 quarterbacks, you locked up a tight end, and now you're looking at the wide receivers and you're like, hey, this is kind of where you get questionable on whether these guys can be a true one for your team. I think you have the potential in a one in Drake London, but what's the offense look like? What's the quarterback look like there in Atlanta? I think it's a big bet to be the one in your team, and then you're coming back with Treylon Burks. You're hoping for an offensive improvement there, and then you've got an unknown in Jordan Addison. It's a lot of unknown for how we like to build out our wide receiving cores, but if it hits, it's going to be good. And you've already locked down the major positions. I believe we said this one's a 1.5 tight end premium to start. Yeah. So, it might not be enough of a premium to say that like you need the top end tight end, but it's definitely a plus. They can basically be slotted in as like a wide receiver 2 most of the time. So I don't think this is a bad start for you at all.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Mark Andrews definitely had a down year in comparison to the year before, but he's still uber efficient. So we'll see kind of what kind of plays out with that. But looking at that fourth round, we had DK, London, Debo, TJ Hawkinson, Devontae Adams, Travis Etienne, DeAndre Swift, Godwin, Jacobs, Olave, JSN, and then Nick Chubb kind of coming off the board here. As I start looking at some of this, it's like, you pick your poison, right? Like Devontae Adams, old, but he's going to produce. Like he's going to put up elite level numbers. And I really contemplated him there because he is a true number 1. Like he is going to put up those numbers, but age concerns. And I'm like, all right, team building, blah, 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 blah. Chris Olave is the one that we have been seeing go in the second round. And reality check kind of set in, and he's here in the late 4th. Feel that's where he belongs.
I mean, if we want to go over to our favorite ranking system, KTC, keep trade cut, Chris Olave is a wide receiver 9 over there.
Get out of here.
I don't personally agree with that, but I'd say he's top 15. If we're willing to put Garrett Wilson up at wide receiver 7, Chris Olave definitely deserves to be up there next to him. And it's the play for youth, man, because we have a lot of guys that are old and producing, but they're going to be phasing out of the league here. Whether we like to say it or not, they're going to be phasing out here over the next 2 to 3 years. When they do, that's up to be seen. But we've got this new crop that's coming in. Your Devonta Smiths, Garrett Wilsons, all of the rookies that we saw break out this year. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's the guy that I really like. I mean, I don't know. He gets pushed down a little bit here.
Yeah.
And I think it's because a little bit of this middle running back group that we saw, you and I mean, you went young. I went a little bit older at the wide receiver with Kupp and Metcalf. Crazy to think that Metcalf's getting to the point that he's a little bit older now because
stop. He's 24. He's fine.
Yeah, I guess just in years that he's played, but I don't know what's caused him to slide here. I think Barry's very happy with that pick, right? Starting off Tyreek Hill, Devonta Smith, Chris Olave. That is a staple of Destination W startup dynasty right there.
Yeah, I mean, he has like Barry's first 5 rounds here, Goff and Hurts, to go with Kittle, Olave, Devonta Smith. He has a stack, and then he has a true alpha in Tyreek. Feels really good. So I do like his for his first 5 rounds here. JSN kind of caught my eye as another wide receiver. Again, up here with Olave, Chris Godwin. I like JSN. I really do. I'm just, is this where he belongs? That's what the 101. It's what 105 off the board, I believe, at this point in time. So, or 104 off the board.
104.
So it feels a little high in terms of the rookies coming off the board, but I don't think we can deny JSN's talent. I mean, he put up 1,600 yards with Olave and Garrett Wilson on the field, and he could be an absolute monster in the NFL. So I do like the pick. I like the player. Just have questions about him when building a roster in a startup, at least.
Yeah, I mean, the questions are going to be there. They're going to be there for any rookie, especially drafting in January. We're probably going to see a lot of these rookies rise up throughout the process. We're going to see different names rise and fall just because we're so early in it. We can project all we want, but we truthfully don't know. We don't know their draft capital. We don't know their landing spot. They could be buried on a let's say one of them goes to the Philadelphia Eagles, a wide receiver goes there. Like, do you really think you're going to be in your rookie year competing with AJ Brown and Devonta Smith? You're probably not. One of them then goes like a JSN I saw recently mocked to Kansas City. Like, the world's going to lose their damn minds whenever, if that were to happen, the fantasy community is going to lose their minds over JSN. So we don't know a lot here. It's a lot of risk taking these rookies, and especially a lot of risk with the quarterbacks. We thought we were locked and loaded to have like 4 quarterbacks in 2022 because of the scarcity at the position, and then we only had 1. We know nothing at this time, so it's dangerous to do your startups right now, but it's a heck of a lot of fun yet.
I would say, like, I mess around, or I even say like JSN's a risky pick. I took Drake London, Treylon Burks, and Jordan Addison as my first 3 wide receivers. Yep. Who am I to say anything about that? So, in the end, the ones that I really wanted to point out that kind of like stood out to me in these few rounds at wide receiver in particular, Chris Godwin kind of sandwiched in there. I love the talent and the upside. Michael Pittman, DJ Moore, Hollywood Brown.
It's just quarterback concern. That's all 3 of them. Good players, but quarterback concerns with all 3 of them.
And that makes a lot of sense. And I still love the talent. Like, those are 3 guys I think I'd be willing to go out and acquire this year. I think we say it every year. DJ Moore is going to get a quarterback this year. It's going to happen.
Man, you don't know how much I want Lamar Jackson to wind up in Carolina just for that.
Nope, not happening.
I know you want it to be Atlanta. That's the betting favorite, I believe, or one of the betting favorites is Atlanta. But right behind them is Carolina, and I think it can still happen. So I'm going to hold out hope for my guy, DJ Moore. Hope he can finally get himself a quarterback because, man, that guy's career has been shunted.
Sure. And Michael Pittman's kind of the same path. Like, he has all the talent in the world. We thought Matt Ryan was going to be an upgrade, and boy, was it not. So he should get a quarterback upgrade this year with a rookie. He should be getting either Bryce Young, Will Levis, CJ Stroud, one of the top 3 quarterbacks. It seems like will be going to Indy. And a lot of the rumors are they want to trade up to get Will Levis. So, hey, they're going to have a quarterback, and it's not Sam Ehlinger, and it's not going to be Matt Ryan or Nick Foles. That's right. So I'm good with any of those. Looking at the quarterback landscape here, let's kind of shift away from wide receiver. There's some other names there that might stand out, but we have kind of that gap between Tua and Stroud, whole round off, and then we have Trey Lance 501, Daniel Jones 502, big chunk of time, Anthony Richardson, question, Will Levis, question, and Jared Goff. We talk about the gap in quarterback here. I just love the value of getting Daniel Jones in the 5th round.
Man, that it has to be one of the best picks. I was talking with somebody earlier today who was saying like, oh yeah, but like it's a lot of risk to have Daniel Jones up in the 3rd, whatever, he doesn't have a contract yet. And I'm like, the chances of the Giants not re-signing Daniel Jones to at least a 2, at least probably a 3, maybe a 4-year deal after what he showed, having Brian Dable run this offense with no weapons, still got them to the playoffs and is running for like 70 yards a game. Daniel Jones deserves some more respect. I know we've had discussions in the Destination W voice chat, Heisman voice chat, of having Daniel Jones over Bryce Young. And Bryce Young went at the 2-9, and Daniel Jones is down here at the 5-2.
Yeah, man. I think Daniel Jones is criminally undervalued right now in Dynasty. He is one of my biggest buys right now. If I can go out and acquire him, I will. I feel like he's going to get a Kirk Cousins-esque deal where it's going to be bigger money, more fully guaranteed for 3 years type of thing. I would love for it to be a 4-year, 5-year deal and just say, this is our guy, put our stamp on it, and let's just get some weapons around Daniel Jones and see what can happen. He was a top 10 quarterback in fantasy, and there's truly no reason he can't be other than the potential of him switching teams. I do think that Dable has, is due credit for his development, but it's also not to say that Daniel Jones is a product of Dable. I do think a lot of Daniel Jones, like he was a top 5 pick. There was no questions about his arm talent or his legs coming in. It was all in place. Dable's kind of just helped him put it together. So I do think that he will be able to succeed anywhere he goes, but maybe it's not going to be the same level as it would be with the Giants. But love getting him in the 5th round, man.
Again, like you said, top 10 fantasy producing quarterback with Isaiah Hodgins and Richie James as his wide receivers 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Like he's not going anywhere worse outside of just his OC and his head coach. He's not going anywhere worse. Like I think the only argument that you could make for a worse wide receiver core is Baltimore. And they still have a very a Pro Bowl level tight end and Rashad Bateman coming back.
That they do.
So I don't know how you could get worse. Maybe the Bears.
Maybe the Bears.
They're close.
They got Claypool, right? 2nd rounder. So we had Jared Goff there. I think Goff is another one that's criminally undervalued. Like I always think he's older than he actually is. He's only 28 years old.
I was going to guess 31.
Yeah, I always feel like he's in his 30s. Like he's 28. Like, he's gonna be a quarterback in this league for a while. He's a just a pro. He's a pro's pro. And whether he leaves Detroit after, because I think his contract expires after 2023, if I'm not mistaken, we'll see what Detroit decides to do, whether they extend him or he's a free agent and decides to go someplace else. But again, the quarterback landscape doesn't change a ton. And I feel like Jared Goff will be a starting quarterback in this league. Anthony Richardson and Will Levis are the other quarterbacks off the board here. Again, we're projecting 1st-round draft capital for these guys at this point from what we've heard. So I don't have any issue with it. Anthony Richardson is a developmental guy, whether he gets on the field in his first year. So that being your first quarterback off the board or, on your team in the 5th round there.
It's a lot of risk.
Makes it questionable, right?
A lot of risk, but there is a lot of upside. We've expressed the upside. I mean, Anthony Richardson goes in the top 15 picks. He looks like he's, long term, it's probably not the best for him to be the starter day one. He does need a lot of growth in a true NFL system that's going to grow and evolve him as a quarterback, as a passer in the NFL. He's not ready to step into that role week 1, but his upside with the physical prowess he does have, with the rushing ability he does have, he's got a chance to be legitimately like a Cam Newton in his prime.
Yeah. He and like the thing is, he is the size of Cam Newton, but he runs like Lamar Jackson. He has all of the wiggle, the spin moves, the juke ability of Lamar at Cam Newton size, and it is crazy to see. So upside, unreal. Jalen Hurts type upside. So catapult him in there if that does happen. But yeah, big time risk for your first quarterback. And I want to round things out here with these first 6 rounds to wrap up with running back, because I don't want to dismiss what you did. We had, Etienne, Jacobs, Chubb, Javonte, Henry, Najee. You took Gibbs and Charbonnet, and then we had Ramondre to round out the running backs here in the 6 rounds. Looking at your team now, you got Kelsey, Lamb, Cup, Metcalf, Gibbs, and Charbonnet. Talk us through your thoughts.
Obviously, by this point, you should know my love for Charbonnet. I don't think I have to really dive into that one too much. But I wish I would have clipped this one actually at round 5 here, because I'm looking at round 5 and I'm looking at the quarterbacks still available. I see the 2 rookies, and I did have the thought of just doubling up on Levis and Richardson and just hammering the 2 rookies home. Now, I always preach that I will not build my quarterback room through the draft. I don't like doing it. The hit rate on rookie quarterbacks fizzling out by year 3 is just too high for my personal risk tolerance. I don't like doing it. And so I'm looking at this round, and luckily we only see Goff come off here. But I'm looking here and I'm like, there's a lot of guys that I'd be okay taking. I've got Russell Wilson still here. I've got Kirk Cousins still here. I've got Jared Goff still here. I've got a lot of guys that I think can come back to me at these next 2 picks. And if I'm looking at the pick value of some of these guys, like, am I really getting like Gibbs? We see going off at like the 104, the 105 in consensus in our rookie mocks right now. At the latest, the 106. Could I trade any of these guys in this round for the 106? I don't think I could. So I wanted that in Gibbs, and then obviously I actually have I have Charbonnet over Gibbs, and so I'm sitting there looking at it like, okay, I don't have my running backs built out yet. I'm going to have very weak quarterbacks. Like, I know that's going to happen, so I need to have upside at other places. I think I've built out a very good wide receiving room so far with my top 3 wide receivers. I've got the best tight end in football. So I'm going to play the game, see what quarterbacks come back to me here. And if I can get 2 just vet guys that are going to be locked and loaded somewhere in the range of like quarterback 16 to quarterback 12, I'm going to be perfectly fine with this roster. And then you all screw me. Everybody in this league decided to say, no, Cody, you can't have quarterbacks. We're going to take 8 quarterbacks off the board between your next 2 picks. And I'm sitting here looking like Matthew Stafford and Mac Jones are now my quarterbacks. You know, it did not feel good. This didn't play out well. I made the risk, I made the bet, and I got burned. I will say I got burned.
I mean, in the end, it's not terrible. I mean, I looking at what your thought process was with the Gibbs and Charbonnet picks, that's where I was with my wide receivers through my first 3, really all of them. I was looking for as much value as I could get, like Drake London, tradable asset. Treylon Burks, people love him. Jordan Addison, he's arguably he's either the wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 of this class. I was just looking at value as well. I was like, okay, what can I do with these pieces? Can I trade them? Deontay Johnson, Calvin Ridley, I kind of took some gambles with those, but yeah, man, I don't blame you at all. And I don't think it's an awful thing getting, I mean, it doesn't feel good. Matt Stafford, lots of questions there. Mac Jones, down year, does have an actual offensive coordinator now. We don't have a defensive coordinator running the offense. That's got to be good for Mac Jones.
It's got to be a plus. As much as I hate Bill O'Brien for ruining the Texans franchise, he is actually an offensive coordinator.
Yep.
I don't think he's still a good one, but he is an offensive coordinator.
Exactly. I would have argued that maybe you take, I get the stack aspect, right? You have Cooper Kupp, Matt Stafford. So if everything clicks, you have the stack, and it's a monster stack that I bought this year a ton of.
Let's do it again. Let's do it again.
Do it again. I would have probably argued taking Derek Carr there over Stafford, Carr, and Jones, but yeah,
I wanted to build a little bit more what I thought was long-term security in Jones, and obviously the stack with Matthew Stafford. If everything does break right, like, I think I could still actually compete if these 3 rookie running backs that I do take here, because I also take A-Chain coming back around. Because again, I'm like, any of these guys I could trade for what I think A-Chain's going to end up being a consensus value by the time we get to the rookie picks. So took A-Chain again. So and then I'll finish out the team here with Mike Evans, a guy that I think can easily bounce back. Had a down year, but still a producer. And I think this team, if it all works out right at the quarterback position and with my rookie picks, I think it could still contend in year 1.
Yeah, I'll run through my team. We'll also look at the board as a whole and kind of highlight some teams here as well. But I wrapped up, as I mentioned, with Deontay Johnson, Calvin Ridley. I ended up getting Miles Sanders and Kendre Miller. I would just hammer running back for the rest of the draft. That's kind of how I like to build. Give me 5, young, talented running back or wide receivers that I feel like could put up some numbers for me, or I could have some tradable value. again, it's challenging drafting out of the back of the draft because you have to not only figure out your strategy, pick a direction, and see what you can do with these picks here. I don't mind my team. I do think I have massive questions at the wide receiver position, but massive upside. Like if Treylon, London, Addison all hit, hey, happy for me. Deontay Johnson has put up wide receiver 1 seasons. He could bounce back. Calvin Ridley, with T-Law in Jacksonville, if he's healthy mentally and physically, the year off may have done him well. So taking some gamble, but I felt like that's what I needed to do at the back part of this draft. Looking at the board as a whole, you had those 8 quarterbacks come off the board before you took anything. What kind of stands out to you as you glare at these last 4 rounds?
I mean, he's been the talk of fantasy for the last couple of weeks, and he just keeps on winning. Brock Purdy at the 9-3, man. I don't know. I truthfully don't know where to value Brock Purdy in a startup right now. But I think this is too low.
Too low?
I think it's too low.
Woo!
I mean, you're really going to tell me that Aaron Rodgers has more security than Brock Purdy right now?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I am.
I don't think so. I mean, there's legitimately a retiring concern where he doesn't play again. Brock Purdy, at the very worst, is going to be a backup that is the highest leveraged backup you could possibly have in the league going into next year. And at best, he's the starter for San Francisco. Minimum, I guess, like the medium outcome of ranges, he gets traded to a different team because somebody else, like the 49ers, in my mind, stupidly go back to Lance because I don't think they should. I think they should roll in with Brock Purdy next year. From what I've seen on the field this year, I think they should. All of these ranges, I think, are better than Aaron Rodgers, Ryan Tannehill, Jordan Love. I think the outcomes of Brock Purdy, there's very few outcomes where I see it as a full-on negative.
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about Brock Purdy. Check out our, go through our YouTube here. Find we actually have it highlighted. I think it was our last episode where we did a 2023 mock. We actually opened up with a Trey Lance and Brock Purdy conversation. I'm with you. Like I do like Brock Purdy. I think that worst case scenario for Brock Purdy is he's going into camp with a camp battle of him and Trey Lance. Worst case scenario. Best case scenario, they trade Trey Lance. They trade him. He's going to be, he's going to have every opportunity to start this next season. So is it too early? I mean, yeah, I guess Jordan
it's
Love.
Not too bad. I mean, you're really looking at, like, if I was to actually go through and say which ones would I actually take him over, I think you have a conversation at Rodgers and Purdy in my mind. I think Rodgers is a little bit overvalued here just because of the concerns of if he's going to play again.
Yeah, I can see that.
But truthfully, would I take him over Carr? Would I take him over Mac Jones? Like, those guys have proven to me, or at least Mac Jones is on a contract where he's the starter. Derek Carr is going to be a starter.
Yep.
I think it's actually probably appropriately valued, but I still love the pick.
I feel like if you're able to get him in the 8th or 9th round, like I feel like that's something you should target in a startup because the upside is immense. Like you have the starting quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers who has thrown no less than 2 touchdowns per game, I believe. Maybe that's changed now in the playoffs, but
has changed now.
Yeah, so with that Dallas game. But hey, Dallas has one of the best defenses there is, and Dan Quinn is a damn good defensive coordinator. For him to scheme up Brock Purdy and Purdy still find a way to beat him, good for San Francisco and that offense. So yeah, I'm with you. I feel like he's a good target here in the 8th, 9th rounds of your startups and see kind of what you can get. Kind of looking at some of the other things. Anything else you wanted to chat about on that topic?
No, I think we've got enough Brock Purdy content out there. Go back and check. I think it's Trey Lance and Brock Purdy on one of our most recent episodes last week, I believe. So go check that one. Check that one out. We dive into it in more detail.
Yeah, the big thing that I always look at here is 7 through 10, what value is there and what positional points are they adding to your roster? And wide receiver kind of dries up. These are names like Amari Cooper played really, really well last year. I think he's going to have another good season. 29 years old. Mike Williams, I feel like I would love to put him in roster clogger status because I feel like even yes, hear
He
me out.
was wide receiver like 11 before he got hurt this year.
He is just he's not it though. He's not it. You're right. Okay, roster clogger ain't it, but he's a freaking wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. His target share is not there. I would much rather like what's he worth? Like a second round pick? Like I don't know, man. Like I've never been a Mike Williams fan. He had his 1 year. He had highlights this year, and it was only because Keenan Allen was out. Don't like it. Do not like it. Super uncertain. Calvin Ridley, I feel the same way about. Bateman, Lockett, D-Hop, you could argue is way too low. Way too low. Like when you think about Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins, both of them are 30. Both of them put up similar points per game, and both of them are going to be alphas on their team. They're target hogs. Like that is what they are. And there's no reason that that's not going to continue. It's when will the fall off come because they are 30. Why are there 5 rounds separating Devontae Adams at the 4-3 and DeAndre Hopkins at what, the 9-1?
Devontae Adams at the 4-5, DeAndre Hopkins at the 9-1. This is legitimately, I probably saw you off the screen there. This is exactly what I was Googling as we pulled this one up, because I remembered a conversation that we had about this draft and talking about Adams and Hopkins. And we're just like, what is truthfully the difference between these two? You can argue that DeAndre Hopkins' situation should be better next year than Devontae Adams's. Devontae Adams, you don't know who his quarterback is going to be, versus DeAndre Hopkins is asking for a trade where he has a no trade clause holdout over the Arizona Cardinals. So he's going to pick what situation he wants to be in. I mean, the betting favorite whenever it first broke was that he was going to be a Kansas City Chief. Like, if you're going to throw DeAndre Hopkins to the Kansas City Chiefs, DeAndre Hopkins next year, if that were to happen, the next startup that we did after that were to happen, he'd go, I bet, in the 3rd round.
I don't know about that. That's kind of crazy. But
I mean, what's the difference between Stephon Diggs and DeAndre Hopkins other than 2 years of age at that point?
Yeah, I'm with you. But he would definitely be up there. I think he'd be much closer to Adams. I think that they would be probably.
I think he'd be above Adams.
You think so?
I don't know how you could argue that he wouldn't be.
Here's the thing. You're right. Right? In theory, you're right. There's no reason it shouldn't be. I would be shocked if DeAndre Hopkins made it that high. For whatever reason, we have this like mental perception of DeAndre Hopkins as not being good or being old, but Devontae Adams as being like this elite wide receiver. I don't know where that mental disconnect ends. And you're right. Like, I feel like we should value him above DeAndre. Or I'm just going to call him Tay because that's how I remember him. Tay Adams. He should be valued above Tay, but he won't be. Consensus value, community value is going to have him so much lower. He's going to be such a huge buy. Such a huge buy. The other one I wanted to point out, not even drafted, talking about old guys, Keenan freaking Allen. Points per game. I know
another guy that could easily be traded to a very good situation.
Yes. Yeah. His contract is either cuttable or they would trade him because he is under contract. And he had the hamstring issue, but it's not similar to Julio, where Julio's was nagging constantly. When they waited it out, made sure he was healthy and ready. And when he was out there and ready, he was actually a top 12 wide receiver in fantasy points per game. And he was back to regular Keenan Allen numbers. So again, another 30-year-old, it's not sexy, but hey, if you're able to give up a 2nd round plus or, just a 2nd round pick to get some of these guys, go do it. Not now, but when the time comes, go do it. Like, they're going to be really freaking good. And they're going to be on really good teams with really good situations. Yeah, just talking about old guys here for a second. Sorry.
No. I mean, we love our old guys in the show. Yeah. Like, this is how we build dynasty teams, right? Like, our average age is probably like 28, where most dynasty rosters are like 23, 24.
It wins.
Wins championships, man. Like, I don't know what else to say about it. But I mean, it was a tear for me at this 10th round pick at the 10:01, whether I was going to go with Mike Evans or Keenan Allen. And I went with Mike Evans, but I could have gone either way.
A little younger.
I would have been perfectly fine going either way. I had a couple more years that I thought that I got with Mike Evans, but Man, really, you're looking at some of these rookie wide receivers that are coming off, like Cedric Tillman, Kayshon Boutte. They have the upside. But if you're asking me if I want to draft them today, without knowing their draft capital, without knowing their landing spot, whether I want a Keenan Allen, a Mike Williams, or some of these wide receivers that we see here, even a Jacoby Myers, that like he's going to be a free agent and have a spot, but where is that? I mean, he could easily be a guy that like the Bears go out and try to acquire to be their like slot receiver there. And are you really excited about Jacoby Myers in that Bears offense? I know I'm not. So there's a lot of risk and there's a lot of de-risking, even though they aren't as movable as an asset, because a lot of people don't want them, especially at this point of the offseason. We see a lot of people, they're trying to liquidate these guys. They're trying to say, hey, I want to de-risk myself. There are a lot of old guys that could get injured. De-risk me and get the value turned into a pick, get them turned into a mid-round second or anything like that. And while that I think is the right process play, I think there's a couple of guys that you can take the advantage on and say, hey, I would rather, even though this is a second round pick, and I would love to press accept on a Rashee Rice, on a what's another guy I have? Xavier Hutchinson is one of Xavier Hutchinson in the third. Some of these guys, you know, like the hit rate of these guys just isn't going to be there. So if you can get a locked and loaded vet, I think that's where I'm going to go, especially in startups in January. I think you have to go with a lot of proven talent. I know I didn't at the running back position, but I think it's a little bit different when you move into the wide receiver position.
Yeah, when you get to round 7 through 10 here, when you really look at wide receiver, you know, you have a lot of question marks. There's a lot of potential, but just like not true alpha wide receiver one potential. Like Mike Williams, Dotson, Bateman, Lockett. Like you get into this iffy range at wide receiver. Good players, you're going to find value. Like we mentioned, Keenan Allen still on the board through 10 rounds, but not anything you're super excited about. The running back position, however, in these rounds are like true legitimate running back ones. J.K. Dobbins, Dalvin Cook, Tony Pollard, Joe Mixon, Damian Pierce, Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara. I mean, Sanders this year, he was a top 6, I think, rusher in the league. He put up running back one numbers. Like you have running backs in this range that win you leagues, that put up running back one numbers. Like that's why like we kind of take the running back late, you know, running backs don't matter method in a way, just for the fact that, hey, I can find value later. Like I can find guys that are still on the board. Brian Robinson still on the board. Like you're going to have Tyler Algier, David Montgomery, James Conner still on the board. Zeke Elliott, we saw kind of a decline there. Antonio Gibson still on the board. Like there's a lot of these guys that are still on the board, Fournette, that can put up numbers that are going to help you win. Whereas there's a little bit more question mark when it comes to taking Cedric Tillman, Kayshon Boutte, you know, Jacoby Myers. We just ran through that scenario. Bateman, we don't really know what he is. We get excited because he was an analytics darling, but like really, what is he? So I feel like that's why we kind of team build the way we do. We're going to hammer this home a lot this offseason. We're going to see a lot of changes as free agency comes and things like that. Anything else you want to highlight out of these last 7 rounds?
No, I think the thing, you know, you're talking about all of these 10 rounds, but whatever it is, you know, we're talking about all these values that are down here at the end of these rounds at the running back position. And there's a lot of volatility at the running back position this year with how many free agents we have, with how many rookies we have coming in. You know, I'm taking Gibbs and taking Zach Charbonnet. I'm taking A-Chain here. Even though I think they're all going to be top 7 running backs in the NFL draft, it might not matter because of their landing spot. They could just get thrown into a timeshare where they're splitting, like they're only getting 40% of the snaps. And it could happen to any of these guys. Dalvin Cook could be put into a timeshare next year. Josh Jacobs could go to a timeshare as he hits free agency next year. Miles Sanders could easily, I mean, he could be almost nothing next year. So a lot of these guys, there's a lot of risk in the running back position this year, especially if you're buying free agents, especially there's a lot of risk. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott, I mean, is that guy going to have a job next year? He's been a staple of fantasy football for like the past 6-7 years, and he might just be a goal line back. Like he could easily be he's probably like the next Melvin Gordon next year. And that's
And
wild to say.
That's very, very possible. That's a huge possibility for him. Yeah, I mean, as we wrap things up here, you can kind of see the board. Definitely here to answer questions, kind of take criticisms of where some of these drafts went. We see a bunch of tight ends start coming off the board here at the end of the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th rounds, or I guess 8th, 9th, and 10th. But I want to highlight a couple teams that I really liked how they drafted. I want to look at the back four first, and then kind of get into some of these guys who lucked into getting top tier quarterbacks. Like we mentioned, it was really challenging to draft out of the 10, 11, 12. I think Kamikaze here, or Berserker as he's known, taking Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown. He ended up getting a nice rookie quarterback in C.J. Stroud, Hawkinson, Najee, Watson. Like, he built a solid team. Some questions at quarterback, getting Najee and J.K. Dobbins, Sean Tucker. You did what you could, taking a couple younger guys as well with Butte and Watson. I like the team. I don't know if that's like a championship contender year one, but it does feel good to get 2 top tier wide receivers at a minimum in those first 2 rounds.
Yeah, those 2 are going to definitely help you. Justin Jefferson, if you want to break Justin Jefferson down, you can break him into a hole. Like, that is one of the top end producers, the top non-quarterbacks that you can actually probably one of the few that you can actually just go out and say, hey, I will swap you Kyler Murray for Justin Jefferson right now. And that actually has to be considered.
Yes.
Even though they're not even close in terms of like where they're coming off the board, as soon as you get out of the startup draft, values where they went in the startup draft don't matter, because you're building for super flex now, and quarterbacks are going to be elevated higher. The only reason we do see a lot of these quarterbacks drop down is just because there's a lot of the same type of guys going off here rounds 5 through rounds 8. Like, what's the difference between a Jared Goff and a Mac Jones at the end of the day? Probably a good amount in production, but it could vary year to year. Any of these guys could vault themselves up to quarterback 12, or any of them could be quarterback 20. Like, that's why you see this massive gap where we just have a bunch of running backs and wide receivers here in the middle rounds. A team that I'd highlight here, I'm going to go for more of the middle. One pick at the beginning I'd make different. Eli Price. I'm a Fields hater, but like, just give me Joe Burrow there, and I love this. I'm going to give you a little bit of flack for taking Fields over Burrow. I can understand it, though. There's a lot of Fields truthers out there. So for me, though, if I was to make that selection, just swap Fields and Burrow, you're going to give me Amon-Ra, Tua, Godwin, DJ Moore, and Brandon Ayuk to round out my super flex and wide receiver positions. Get a third quarterback in Geno Smith, who I personally believe is going to be extended to a 2 to 3 year deal in Seattle. And then a running back that I really like in Dameon Pierce out of Houston, and Rachaad White for the long term in Tampa Bay, rounding it out with Cole Kmet. That is a team that I really like. Just take Burrow instead of Fields.
Just take Burrow, right? Just take Burrow. Yeah, no, I definitely like that one. I like Barry's build. We kind of touched on that one a little bit earlier. The first 5-6 rounds for him were phenomenal, and he just rounded it out with being able to add Joe Mixon, Pat Freiermuth, Brock Purdy, and Jacoby Myers. So very good draft there. Again, it is a mock draft. We're all testing different theories out. So some things we find out work, some things we find out don't. We have a couple running back heavy teams that are finding out that they're missing out on wide receiver. Hey, maybe, like Lord Barquad ended up getting 2, nice quarterbacks, Pittman as your alpha, but loaded up on running back, got Darren Waller, Tannehill, gonna have to get Keenan Allen, gonna have to chase wide receiver, and unfortunately it gets gross. Like,
I don't think he can come away upset with the draft, though, because he got the Barquads.
Sure. Yeah, he got his guy Bark. So, I mean, he's got some top tier running backs there that you could trade, right? You have some trade value there. Cody the Bruce looks like he got Breece Hall, Swift, and Javonte. So you got 3 solid
That's
running
one
backs.
For a running back heavy room that I don't actually mind.
Yes.
You're gonna hope to luck into some explosions from Pickens, Dotson, and Bateman, but if you can get 1 or 2 of those guys to hit, that would turn into a really good team.
And the fact that he was able to get Burrow, where he did, and Murray, like, he got Burrow, Kyler, he was able to get 2 solid guys, getting a tradable asset in Will Levis. If Will Levis goes 101 like we've seen, or even top 5, God, like, you just don't need him on your team when you have those other 2. Like, that's a very, very good asset that he could trade for a top tier wide receiver. So yeah, really like the build, and again, it's trade assets. We don't get to see this play out, but I don't mind what we did either at the back of the draft. Definitely some question marks, definitely some tinkering I want to do. It's rough. You don't get an elite tier quarterback. You got a couple options, and we're going to test those theories out here. Any last things you want to kind of touch on before we get out of here?
Yep, I don't think I'd be taking Travis Kelce at the 112. I don't recommend it. I would be much happier with this team if I had actually just stacked Dak and Lamb at that turn right there. Coming away, I mean, obviously, I could not have imagined this run of quarterbacks that was going to happen between my 6 and 7 picks, and I think it came back to bit me, but I still think it turned out all right. Still not the way I'd like to build out my team, but we're going to have future mocks like this. We're going to keep doing these startup mocks. We're going to track our ADP with them. And so if you do want to be in these startup mocks, let us know in the comments. We can get you in. We're going to be running one of these at least every month, all the way up until the regular season. So get in them. Reach out to us on Twitter, Discord. If you think any of these values on the board are god awfully too high or way, way, way too low, also leave those in the comments. Love to hear from y'all, especially in these startup mocks. We know that our evaluations can differ wildly, community to community. So love to hear back from y'all, whatever you got.
Yeah, please like and subscribe. Let us know your favorite teams as well. And if you do want to be in these startup mocks or even 2023 rookie mocks, we will be mocking galore. We are the fantasy draft room. So there's going to be lots of drafting happening and lots of this on YouTube. So yes. Any last things before we wrap up?
No, man. Get us on out of here.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. Again, like, subscribe, and thank you for joining us here in the fantasy draft room.